There's a moment when you realize your entire life was built on suffering you never saw. When the comfortable existence you took for granted reveals itself as your parents' impossible dream, made real. 24-year-old Isabella Bella Reyes had that moment in her garage. She found a box her parents had hidden for 20 years. Inside were secrets that would shatter her world and remake her soul in ways she never imagined possible. Bella grew up thinking she knew her parents, Ernesto, the quiet hospital administrator who never raised his voice, Davina, the gentle pharmacist who hummed while cooking. They lived in a modest San Diego home, drove reliable cars, took her to Disneyland twice. They seemed ordinary, safe, simple. She had no idea they'd once been desperate young people scattered across the Middle East, starving themselves in foreign countries, praying they'd survive long enough to give her the ordinary life she'd always dismissed as boring. Before we go deeper, like this video, if you've ever wondered what your parents never told you about their struggles, subscribe because this story will change everything you thought you knew about immigrant sacrifice. Share this with someone who needs to understand the price of the life they're living. And comment Pinoy if you know there are stories hidden in every Filipino family that would break our hearts if we knew them. Now let me tell you what Bella discovered. Her mother asked her to clean the garage on an ordinary Saturday morning. Bella almost said no. She had brunch plans, a comfortable life to maintain, but something in Davina's voice made her pause, a tremor, a hope, a fear. So she went to the garage. And there, buried under Christmas decorations and old furniture, she found a cardboard box that looked different from all the others. Worn edges, tape yellowed with age, no label. Just numbers written in faded marker. 1997 to 2003. The ghost years, the hidden years. Bella's hands shook as she peeled back the tape. She didn't know why she felt afraid. It was just a box, just old papers. But somehow she knew opening it would change everything. The smell hit her first. Aged paper, old photographs, the scent of things deliberately forgotten. Inside, she found evidence of a life her parents had never mentioned. Letters to people with names she didn't recognize. Photographs of her parents looking gaunt and exhausted. A diary in her father's careful handwriting, and a paycheck stub that made her stomach drop. 420 dirhams, about 115 American dollars, her father's monthly salary in Dubai, August 1998. Bella stared at the number until it blurred. She spent more than that on weekend brunches with friends. Her car payment was 3 times that amount. Her monthly Spotify and Netflix subscriptions cost nearly half of what her father had earned for an entire month of construction work in brutal desert heat. 30 days, $115, and somehow from that impossible amount he'd fed himself. Sent money home, saved for America, for her. She pulled out a photograph. Her mother, maybe 26 years old, standing in what looked like a tiny bare apartment. The woman in the photo bore her mother's face, but not her spirit. This woman looked hollowed out, breakable, surviving on fumes and prayers. Dark shadows under her eyes like bruises. Thin in a way that spoke of skipped meals, not gym routines. The back of the photo had writing in her mother's hand. Day 43, in Riyadh. Sent everything home today. 20 reals left until next pay. But my family ate this week. God is good. More photographs emerged like archaeological evidence of lives her parents had buried. Her father in Qatar, wearing work clothes stained with concrete dust and sweat, standing with a group of Filipino men in front of a half-built skyscraper. All of them looked tired beyond their years. All of them looked like they were carrying impossible weight. Her mother in Saudi Arabia, hospital uniform pristine, despite obvious exhaustion, staring at the camera with eyes that said, "I'm surviving, that's all I can manage right now." These weren't the parents who'd raised her, these were strangers who'd paid with their bodies and souls for her comfortable American childhood. Then the letters, dozens of them. Letters her father had written to her mother during their 6-year separation. Letters he'd never sent because international postage was too expensive, and he needed every fils, every rial, every baht saved for their future. Bella's hands trembled as she opened one dated June 14th, 1999. My beloved Davina, it has been 8 months since I held you. I sleep in a room with 9 other men. We have 6 beds. We take shifts. The heat makes breathing difficult. But I'm saving my love for us, for our future children. Please don't give up on me. Bella sat on the concrete garage floor, surrounded by evidence of love she'd never witnessed, sacrifice she'd never honored. She opened another letter, this one from her mother to her father, also unsent, also preserved. November 2000. Ernesto, my heart. I fainted during my shift yesterday. They caught me before I hit the floor. I'm working doubles 6 days a week now. The hospital pays overtime, but the exhaustion is crushing me. I haven't slept more than 4 hours in 3 weeks. But we're close, Mahal. Just 2 more years, and we can finally be together in America. I can endure anything for that dream. At the bottom of the box, Bella found her father's diary, a small notebook, pages thin as onion skin, filled with entries in mixed Tagalog and English. She could read enough Tagalog from childhood to understand most of it. She opened to March 7th, 2001, and the words stopped her breath. Another death today on the construction site, heat stroke. A man named Roberto from Pampanga, only 28 years old, 3 children back home who don't know their father is gone yet. We carried his body down together. It could have been me. Any day, it could have been me. Bella's throat closed. Her father had witnessed death, had touched bodies, had looked into the abyss and kept working because stopping meant abandoning the dream of her existence. The entry continued. The company won't compensate Roberto's family. They're calling it worker negligence. We're all terrified, but we can't leave. Our families need the remittances, so we stay, we endure, we pray we don't die before we make it home. I called Davina tonight. Spent half my food budget on phone minutes. Hearing her voice was worth the hunger I'll feel tomorrow. Love is choosing which suffering you can live with. She found an entry from October 2002 that made her weep. Davina called today. Her voice was different, broken in a new way. She told me she's been sleeping in the hospital storage room because she can't afford both rent and food. She chose food so she has energy to work. I sent her everything I'd saved this month. Now I'll sleep in the construction site office until my next pay. The foreman pretends not to notice. We're all doing this, all sacrificing in ways that would horrify the people we're doing it for. That's the immigrant bargain. We endure invisible suffering so our children can have visible joy. Bella couldn't breathe through the crying. Her mother had been homeless. Her father had slept illegally in an office. They'd scattered across different Middle Eastern countries, barely surviving, sending every possible cent to family in the Philippines and scraping together dreams of an American future with their leftover coins. And they'd never told her, never burdened her with the knowledge that her existence had cost them everything. They'd hidden their crucifixion so she could live resurrected. They'd carried the cross so she could wear the crown. And she'd never even known there was a cross. She found stacks of remittance receipts, Western Union, LBC, every month for 6 years. Money sent to different people in the Philippines, her father's mother in Bulacan, her mother's family in Batangas, cousins she'd never met, siblings who'd raised them, each receipt annotated in her father's handwriting. Nane's diabetes medicine, Kuya's tuition, 3rd-year civil engineering, Eight's hospital delivery, Lola's funeral. Her parents had fed an entire ecosystem of relatives while starving themselves. They'd educated cousins while living in storage rooms. They'd saved lives while risking their own. The math was impossible. The love was infinite. Then Bella found the letter that destroyed her, written by her mother to her father, never sent. Dated December 24th, 2002, Christmas Eve. My dearest Ernesto, I need to tell you something, and I'm terrified. I'm pregnant. I found out 3 days ago. We're going to have a baby. I'm crying as I write this because I'm so happy and so heartbroken. You're in Qatar. I'm in Saudi Arabia. We're thousands of miles apart. Our baby will be born into this separation. I don't know if I can do this alone, but I'll try. For us, for our family, for the future we've been building with our blood and tears. Bella's hands shook so violently she almost dropped the next letter. January 15th, 2003. Ernesto, our baby is gone. I lost the pregnancy at 4 months. The doctor said it was stress and exhaustion. Too many hours, too little rest. My body couldn't hold on. I'm destroyed. I feel like I've failed you, failed our future, Failed the one beautiful thing we'd created in all this suffering. But we'll try again, Mahal. When we're together, in America, where we don't have to choose between survival and our child, I promise you we'll try again. Bella sobbed in the garage, her face pressed against the concrete floor, understanding with devastating clarity what her parents had lost before she existed. She'd had an older sibling, a baby who died because her mother's body was too exhausted from survival to sustain new life. Her parents had grieved a child alone on separate continents, unable to hold each other through the loss. And then they'd gotten up the next day and kept working, kept saving, kept believing. They'd lost everything and chosen to believe they could still have something. She was that something. She was the dream they rebuilt from ashes. And she'd never known about the fire. She found one more diary entry that made everything clear. June 8, 2003. Her father's handwriting slightly shaky. We're finally together in San Diego. Same city, same apartment, same bed. After 6 years of separation. After losing our first child, Davina is pregnant again. We're terrified, hopeful, praying harder than we've ever prayed. We've made a decision. We will never tell our child about these years, about the separation, the suffering, the loss. We want them to grow up free, unburdened, American. Our pain is our gift. Their ignorance is our success. Their confidence is our victory. Bella finally understood. Her parents had deliberately given her the privilege of not knowing. They'd wanted her to walk through life without the weight of their sacrifice pressing on her shoulders. They'd wanted her to feel entitled to her good life so she'd never feel guilty about enjoying it. They'd hidden their crucifixion so she could live without shame. But in doing so, they'd also hidden the depth of their love, the magnitude of their strength, the power of their commitment. She'd lived 24 years thinking her parents were ordinary. She'd been wrong. They were extraordinary people who'd chosen to appear ordinary so she could feel extraordinary. Bella stayed in that garage for 4 hours. She read every letter, every diary entry, every remittance receipt, every photograph annotation. By the time her mother called her in for dinner, Bella had lived 6 years of her parents' hidden life. She'd walked through their starvation, their separation, their grief, their endurance. She'd seen them young and desperate and fierce with determination. She'd witnessed love in its purest form, the kind that suffers silently, so others can laugh loudly. And she understood now why they'd never told her. Because this knowledge changed everything. And they'd wanted her to live unchanged, unburdened, free. Bella walked into the kitchen carrying the box like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Her parents were cooking together, Davina chopping vegetables, while Ernesto stirred something on the stove. They looked up and saw the box in her hands. Davina's knife clattered into the sink. Ernesto turned off the burner with shaking hands. They both stared at the box like it was a ghost they'd hoped would stay buried. Bella's voice broke when she finally spoke. "Why did you hide this? Why did you let me live my entire life not knowing what you gave up for me?" Davina started crying immediately, not gentle tears, deep wrenching sobs that came from a place she'd kept locked for 24 years. Ernesto sat down at the kitchen table like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. When he spoke, his voice sounded ancient. "Because we didn't want you to live with debt, Anak. Not financial debt, we never wanted that. But the debt of knowing. The weight of feeling like you owe us something for being born. We wanted you to live freely, to dream big without feeling guilty, to be American in the way we could never be. That was the whole point of everything we suffered." Bella pulled out the letter about the miscarriage with trembling hands. "You lost a baby. I had a sibling who died. And you never told me?" Davina pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking. "We grieved alone for so long, Anak, thousands of miles apart. By the time you were born, we decided to move forward, to focus on you, on giving you joy. Telling you about your lost sibling felt like passing on our sorrow. We didn't want you carrying ghosts. We wanted you carrying dreams. So we buried our first child in our hearts and loved you with everything we had left." Bella held up the paycheck stub. $115 a month. You lived on this while I'm over here complaining about my student loans. Ernesto took the faded paper from her hands, looked at it like he was seeing his younger self. "We did what love required, Bella. Love isn't just the good parts. It's the starving yourself so your family eats part. It's the sleeping in storage rooms so your future children have bedrooms part. It's the dying a little every day so someone else can live fully part. We do it again. We do it 1,000 times because you're worth every sacrifice we made and every one we'd still make. Bella found the photograph of her mother in the floral dress looking skeletal. You were dying. You were literally killing yourself to send money home while barely surviving yourself. Davina took the photograph with trembling fingers. I wasn't dying, Anak. I was building. Every pound I lost was foundation being laid. Every meal I skipped was brick in your future house. Every exhausted shift was thread in the safety net I was weaving for you. I wasn't losing myself. I was creating you. That's what mothers do. We give our bodies so our children can have futures. It's the oldest magic in the world. They talked until 3 a.m. Bella's parents finally opened the vault they'd kept sealed for 2 decades. They told her everything. The hunger that made them dizzy during work, the loneliness that felt like drowning, the racism that tried to break their spirits, the homesickness that was a physical ache in their chests, the fear that they'd never actually make it to America, the terror when Davina was pregnant, the soul-crushing grief when they lost their first child, the overwhelming gratitude when Bella was born healthy, the conscious decision to bury their trauma so she could live trauma-free. Ernesto told her about the man who died from heat stroke. His name was Roberto Salazar. He had 3 daughters, 8, 6, and 4 years old. He'd sent them photos of himself in front of a skyscraper he was helping build. They thought he was succeeding. They didn't know he was sleeping in a shipping container with 11 other men. They didn't know the company wouldn't let them drink water during work hours to save money on bathroom breaks. Roberto died for $45 a day. His daughters still don't know the truth. They think their father died a hero. Maybe he did. Maybe we all did in our own way. Davina talked about Saudi Arabia. I worked with other Filipina nurses who became my sisters. One of them, Ate Gloria, collapsed during surgery from exhaustion. The hospital fired her the next day and deported her. 20 years of perfect service. 1 moment of human weakness. Gone. I watched them do that, and I worked twice as hard because I had you coming. I had a future worth staying alive for. I saw women break. I saw women give up. I refused to be one of them because somewhere in my future, you existed that kept me breathing when breathing felt impossible. Bella learned that her parents had lived in 5 different Middle Eastern countries between them over 6 years. UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Kuwait. Always separated by visa restrictions and job contracts, they'd communicated through rare phone calls that cost more than food. Sometimes months would pass without contact. They'd gotten married in a small church in Batangas, then immediately separated for work. Their honeymoon was 6 years of longing. Their early marriage was letters and faith. Their love was suffering in parallel dimensions, believing they'd eventually converge. And eventually, they did. In America, in each other's arms. With Bella growing in Davina's womb. The promised land, the answered prayer. The Balikbayan boxes, Bella said. You send them every year. Why? Ernesto's eyes filled with tears. Because we remember everyone who held us together when we were falling apart. Every cousin who sent us encouraging texts. Every aunt who prayed for us by name. Every uncle who believed we'd make it. Every relative who fed us when we came home broke. The boxes are our way of saying we didn't forget. We made it, but we made it because of them. The boxes are memory, they're gratitude. They're the proof that success is never individual. It's always collective. We carry each other. That's the Filipino way. Davina showed Bella the family WhatsApp group. 58 family members in the Philippines, daily messages, photos of births and graduations, updates on illnesses, requests for help with school fees, celebrations of small victories. This is why we send money, Anak, your cousin Marikit. We paid her nursing school. She's saving lives now in Manila. Your cousin Joel? We funded his engineering degree. He's building bridges that connect communities. Your cousin Luz, we helped her start a sari-sari store. She's feeding her family with dignity now. We don't give charity. We invest in family. And family invests back. It's a circle, a system, a safety net made of love. Bella realized she'd never met most of these relatives, never visited the Philippines except once when she was 12, never learned fluent Tagalog, never really connected with her Filipino heritage. She'd been so focused on being American that she'd severed herself from half of who she was. Her parents had sacrificed to give her American privilege, but in the process, she'd lost Filipino connection. The irony cut deep. They'd succeeded at their goal. She was confident, American, unburdened, but something essential had been lost. She'd gained a country. She'd lost her roots. She'd won assimilation. She'd lost belonging. "I want to go," Bella said, her voice fierce with determination. "To the Philippines, to Bulacan, to Batangas. I want to meet every single person in that WhatsApp group. I want to see where you came from, where I came from. I want to understand this part of myself I've been ignoring. I want to learn what you were trying to protect me from knowing. Because maybe I needed to know all along." Ernesto and Davina looked at each other, tears streaming down both their faces. "We've been waiting 24 years for you to ask that, Anak," Davina whispered. "We were terrified you never would." 3 weeks later, Bella stepped off the plane at Ninoy Aquino International Airport. The humidity wrapped around her like an embrace. The chaos of Manila traffic felt like coming home to a place she'd never been. Her parents had called ahead. The entire extended family was waiting at arrivals. 43 relatives holding a banner that said, "Welcome home, Isabella." She saw faces that looked like hers. Eyes that held her father's kindness, smiles that echoed her mother's warmth. They rushed toward her with arms open. And Bella, who'd lived 24 years as an American, felt Filipino for the first time in her life. Her father's mother, Lola Pachita, age 86, took Bella's face in weathered hands. She spoke in rapid Tagalog. Bella's cousin, Marikit, translated. "She says you look exactly like your father when he left for Dubai. Same determined eyes, same hopeful face. She says she prayed for you every single day before you were born. She kept a candle lit for you in the church for 3 years. She says you're the miracle she begged God for when your father was in danger and your mother was alone. She says you're not just their daughter. You're the answered prayer of an entire family. Welcome home, Apo. Welcome home to the people who loved you before you existed." The house in Bulacan was small. Concrete walls painted cheerful blue, simple furniture worn soft by decades of use. Photographs everywhere, generations of families spanning 100 years of Filipino history. Bella saw her father in countless photos, young Ernesto laughing with cousins, teenage Ernesto graduating from high school, 23-year-old Ernesto leaving for the airport with one small bag, the visual history of a boy becoming a man, becoming a migrant, becoming a father. These were the roots she'd never known she had. This was the soil her family tree grew from. This was home in a way San Diego had never quite been. Over the next week, Bella heard stories that changed how she understood everything. Her uncle Ramon told her about the night Ernesto left for Dubai. "Your father was 23. He'd never been on a plane, never left Bulacan. He cried saying goodbye to our mother. He was terrified he'd die in a foreign country, but he went anyway. For your mother, for the family he dreamed of having, for you, even though you didn't exist yet. He sacrificed his safety for your possibility. That's not just courage, Anak. That's faith. That's love in its purest form. He walked into the unknown for people who were still just dreams." Cousin Marikit took Bella to the public hospital where she worked, the same hospital her parents had supported through years of tuition payments. "Your mom paid for my entire nursing education, Bella, 4 years of tuition. Books, uniforms, board exam fees. My family couldn't afford it. I was going to work in a factory. Then your mom sent a letter with money for my first semester. She said, 'I remember what it feels like to want education you can't afford. Don't let money stop your dream.' She funded my dream from 8,000 miles away. Now I save lives every day. That's what your parents did. They multiplied their suffering into blessings for others." Cousin Joel took Bella to a bridge he'd designed and built. It connected 2 barangays across a river, allowing children to get to school and workers to reach jobs without dangerous flooding risks. "Your father funded my entire engineering education. When my father died in my final year, I was going to drop out. Your dad sent money immediately, wouldn't take no for an answer, said family invests in family. This bridge carries 400 people safely every day. Children who might have drowned in the river during rainy season. Workers who can now get to their jobs. Your father's sacrifice multiplied. His pain created this bridge. That's the miracle of immigrant sacrifice. One person's suffering becomes a whole community's blessing. Lola Pachita took Bella to the room where Ernesto grew up, tiny. One window, concrete floor, a simple bed with a thin mattress, walls covered with his childhood drawings and school awards. "He was so brilliant, your father," Lola said through Marakit's translation. "Top of his class. Teachers said he could be anything. Doctor, lawyer, anything. But we were poor, so he worked instead. He sacrificed his dreams so he could fund yours. Every parent wants their child to go further. Your father went to the Middle East so you could go to college. He traded his possibilities for yours. That's what parents do. We decrease so our children can increase." In Batangas, Bella met her mother's family. Tita Rosario showed her the Sari Sari store where Divina had worked as a teenager. "Your mother started working here at 14, every day after school, weekends, Christmas, Easter. She saved every single peso for nursing school. She studied under streetlights when our house didn't have electricity. She made flashcards from old newspapers because she couldn't afford proper materials. She became a nurse through pure determination. Then she went to Saudi Arabia and sent money back to educate 5 of your cousins. She broke the poverty cycle for all of us. She's the reason this family has professionals now instead of just laborers." Tita Rosario showed Bella faded photographs of young Divina in nursing school, exhausted but glowing with pride in her white uniform. She worked 3 jobs while studying, sold lugao at the market before class, tutored high school students after class, cleaned houses on weekends. She slept 4 hours a night for 4 years. When she passed her nursing board exam, the entire barangay celebrated for 3 days. She was our hero, our proof that education could save us. Then she left for Saudi Arabia. We cried when she left. But we understood she was going to multiply her success into all of our futures, and she did. Every single one of us is better because she suffered first. Bella visited the church where her parents had married 30 years earlier, small, Catholic, beautiful in its simplicity. The priest who'd married them, Father Miguel, now 72, still remembered. They were so young, so in love, so poor. They had nothing but faith and each other. Ernesto promised to build Divina a good life. She promised to walk through fire with him. 2 weeks after the wedding, they separated. He went to Dubai. She stayed to finish nursing school. Their first year of marriage, they saw each other twice. But their love held. Faith held. Their covenant was stronger than distance. That's rare. That's beautiful. That's what built you, anak. Bella spent 2 weeks in the Philippines, meeting relatives, hearing stories, understanding the vast network of people her parents had supported over 2 decades, the tuition they'd paid, the medical bills they'd covered, the businesses they'd funded, the houses they'd helped build, the family members they'd employed. Her parents had quietly lifted 58 people out of poverty over 20 years while living modestly themselves. And Bella had known none of it. She'd thought Balikbayan boxes were just used clothes and chocolates. She'd had no idea about the money, the investment, the systematic family uplift her parents were orchestrating across oceans. On her last night in Bulacan, Lola Pachita gave Bella a worn rosary, the same one she'd prayed with every single night for 6 years while Ernesto was in the Middle East. "I prayed for your father's safety, for his success, for his future wife, for his future children, for you, even though I didn't know your name yet. Every night for 6 years, this rosary holds all those prayers, all that faith, all that hope. Now I give it to you. Pray for your parents, pray for your family, pray for the next generation. Keep the chain of blessing going. Remember where you came from, remember who sacrificed, remember that your life cost everything, then live like you know that, live worthy." Bella held that rosary and understood finally what her mother had meant years ago when she'd said, "We wanted you to feel entitled to your good life." They'd hidden the cost so she wouldn't live crushed by debt. But debt isn't always burden. Sometimes debt is awareness. Sometimes debt is gratitude. Sometimes debt is responsibility. And Bella wanted to feel that weight. She wanted to carry what her parents had tried to shield her from, because carrying their sacrifice meant honoring it, meant making it mean something, meant living in a way that proved their suffering wasn't wasted, that their pain produced purpose, that their sacrifice was sacred. Bella returned to San Diego fundamentally changed. She moved back in with her parents. Not because she needed to, Because she wanted to. Because she'd spent 24 years taking their presence for granted and she refused to waste another day. She quit her corporate marketing job, enrolled in nursing school. Her friends thought she'd lost her mind. She was 24 with a good career. Why start over? Bella tried to explain she was honoring her mother's journey by walking a version of it. Her mother became a nurse to escape poverty. Bella would become a nurse to serve community. Same path, different purpose, generational healing. She studied Tagalog seriously. Daily lessons, conversation practice with her parents, Filipino movies with subtitles. She joined the Filipino American Community Center, volunteered with new immigrants, navigating the same systems her parents had conquered alone. She saw fresh OFWs struggling with culture shock, language barriers, economic stress, loneliness. She became the welcome her parents never had, the guide they'd needed but never got. She was paying forward the suffering they'd endured in silence. It felt sacred. It felt necessary. It felt like finally understanding why she'd been born, not just to live well, but to help others live better, to make the sacrifice multiply. Bella started a blog called The Balikbayan Daughter. She wrote about finding the box, about reading the letters her father never sent, about discovering the child her parents lost, about meeting 58 relatives she'd never known, about understanding OFW sacrifice for the first time, about waking up to the cost of her comfortable American life. The blog went viral. Thousands of second-generation Filipino Americans reached out. They all had similar stories. Parents who'd hidden their suffering, children who'd taken everything for granted. And now, finally, adult children waking up to the magnitude of what had been given. Bella's honesty gave them permission to ask, to dig, to know, to honor. One year, after finding the box, Bella was in nursing school, working part-time at a community health clinic, video calling Philippine relatives weekly, sending her own Balikbayan boxes, learning what her parents had always known. Family is investment, support is circular, privilege is responsibility, success is collective. She'd taken over funding some of the scholarship payments. She was learning the weight of being the source instead of the recipient. The pressure to not let people down, the joy of getting a photo of a cousin graduating because of your support, the fear of disappointing people who were counting on you. She was living her parents' truth now. And it was harder and more beautiful than she'd ever imagined. Her relationship with her parents transformed completely. They talked for hours now about the years they'd hidden. Davina finally admitted her deepest fear. "I worried we made a mistake hiding our past. Maybe you would have appreciated things more if you'd known how much they cost." Bella shook her head fiercely. "You gave me exactly what you intended: confidence without guilt, freedom without debt, the ability to dream big without feeling like I owed you. Now, I'm choosing gratitude on my own terms. That's more powerful than forced gratitude from guilt. I'm not grateful because I have to be. I'm grateful because I finally understand what love actually costs. That's the gift you gave me." Ernesto showed Bella something he'd kept hidden even from Davina for 24 years, a letter he'd written to his unborn child when Davina was pregnant in 2003, written after they'd lost their first baby, written from a place of terror and hope. "To my child, whoever you become, I'm writing this before you're born, before I know if you'll survive, before I know if this dream will break us or save us. Your mother and I have suffered in ways I'll never tell you about. We've been broken by distance and loss and poverty and fear, but we survived because we believed in you. In the future you represent, we're giving you everything we never had. Please, my child, please make it worth it. Please live like you know what it cost. Please be our answered prayer." Bella read that letter with tears streaming down her face, understanding viscerally that she wasn't just living for herself. She was living for the sibling who didn't make it, for the 6 years her parents spent separated, for the baby they lost while they were suffering on different continents, for every prayer Lola Pachita had whispered, for every relative who'd believed in a future they'd never see, for every dollar her parents had saved while starving, for every night they'd cried themselves to sleep in foreign countries. She was the embodiment of faith rewarded, the dream that came true, the prayer that got answered, the suffering that produced blessing. She wasn't just Bella. She was hope made flesh. Bella created a nonprofit called Balikbayan Legacy. The mission was simple but revolutionary: connect second-generation Filipino Americans with the Philippine relatives their parents had been supporting invisibly for decades. Create relationships, build understanding, honor the network. She partnered with Marikit and Joel to create scholarship programs for the next generation. They were systematizing what their parents' generation had done informally through remittances. They were making family investment intentional, transparent, sustainable, generational. They were building institutions on the foundation their parents had bled to create. They were making the invisible visible, making the sacrifice sacred, making the suffering mean something bigger than just survival. The nonprofit exploded. 800 members in the first year. Second-generation Filipino Americans hungry to understand the stories their parents had hidden. They collected oral histories, made documentaries, connected diaspora kids with Philippine relatives they'd never met, created heritage trips that brought American-born Filipinos to the provinces their parents had escaped, funded education for 200 students across the Philippines. Bella's parents watched with tears that never seemed to stop. Their daughter had taken their private shame and transformed it into public pride. She'd taken their hidden suffering and made it a movement. She'd understood the assignment completely. Privilege isn't something you enjoy alone. It's something you multiply. It's something you share. It's something you use to lift the people who lifted you. Bella met others like her, third-generation Filipino Americans even more disconnected than she'd been, who didn't speak Tagalog at all, who'd never been to the Philippines, who saw their Filipino heritage as something embarrassing instead of empowering, who whitewashed their last names and straightened their hair and pretended to be Spanish instead of Pacific Islander. Bella understood them because she'd been them. She taught them what Lola Pasita had taught her. Your parents' sacrifice isn't shame. It's superpower. It's proof your family knows how to survive impossible things. It's evidence you come from people who chose love over comfort, family over safety, future over present. That's not embarrassment. That's legacy. That's power. That's who you are. Her parents started opening up with Philippine relatives in new ways. They'd always sent money quietly, boxes discreetly. Now they talked about why, about what each gift had cost, about the hunger behind each remittance, about the homelessness that funded each scholarship, about the separation that paid for each celebration. The relatives understood for the first time what they'd been receiving. They'd gotten boxes and money for 20 years without knowing the suffering that produced each one. Now they knew. And the gratitude transformed from polite appreciation to sacred understanding. The family stopped being people who took from Ernesto and Divina and became people who honored what Ernesto and Divina had sacrificed. The dynamic shifted from charity to covenant. When Lola Pasita died at 88, Bella flew to the Philippines for the 9-day prayer vigil. Over 500 people came to pay respects. Bella learned that Lola Pasita had been the prayer warrior not just for Ernesto, but for 43 OFW children from their barangay. She'd kept a notebook with every overseas worker's name. She'd prayed for each one daily for 30 years. The community called her Lola ng mga manggagawa sa ibang bayan, grandmother of the overseas workers. She'd held spiritual space for all the family separation, all the fear, all the hope, all the children born in foreign countries. All the sacrifices made for futures unseen. Bella understood her story was everyone's story. OFW pain was collective, communal, shared, universal. At the funeral, Bella gave the eulogy in Tagalog. Her parents sobbed hearing their daughter honor their mother in the language they'd worried she'd never truly claim. Bella talked about Lola Pasita's faith, her prayer life, her belief in the power of family to survive anything if they stayed connected. About how she'd never made Ernesto feel guilty for leaving, never burdened him with her loneliness, just prayed, just believed, just loved, just waited. That's the Filipino way, Bella said, her voice breaking. We release the ones we love to chase dreams. We pray their wings stay strong. We celebrate when they land safely. We never clip their flight with our fear. That's what Lola taught me. That's what she taught all of us. Love doesn't cage, love sets free, and trusts God to bring them home. After the funeral, Bella and her parents returned to the Balikbayan box. They'd kept adding to it over the years. Now it held layers of family history. The original letters from the suffering years, but also Bella's nursing school acceptance letter, photos from her Philippine heritage trip, letters she'd written to relatives, copies of Balikbayan legacy nonprofit documents. The next generation's story layering on top of the previous generation's sacrifice. Ernesto watched Bella add her own memories to the box and said something that made everyone cry. "This box used to hold our shame. Now it holds our legacy. You transformed our suffering into something sacred, Enoch. You made the pain mean something. That's all we ever wanted." Bella graduated nursing school at 26. Davina wore the same floral dress from the Saudi Arabia photo, the one she'd worn while sleeping in a storage room 23 years earlier. She'd kept it intentionally, waiting for this moment, waiting to close the circle, her daughter, the dream she'd starved for, graduating with the same degree she'd earned through suffering. Ernesto wore a barong Tagalog his mother had sewn for him before he left for Dubai, clothing as testimony, fabric as memory. The entire Philippine family video called in to watch. 43 people on split screen. Marikit in her hospital uniform, Joel in front of his latest bridge. Family witnessing family. Success multiplying across oceans, the suffering becoming harvest. Bella got a job at the community health clinic where she'd been volunteering. She worked with immigrant families, mostly Filipino. She saw herself in their children, kids who didn't understand sacrifice, who rolled eyes when parents asked for gratitude, who'd been protected from struggle so completely they'd forgotten to appreciate survival. She told them her story, about the box, about the letters, about the lost sibling, about the relatives, about waking up. Some listened, some didn't. She planted seeds and trusted time would water them, just like Lola Pachita had done, just like her parents had done, just like someone would need to do for the next generation. Bella met Mateo at the Filipino American Center, 27, third-generation architect. His grandparents had been among the first wave of OFWs in the 1970s. His story was similar: privilege without context, comfort without understanding, recent awakening to family history. They bonded over shared guilt and shared determination, over the weight of being the answered prayers people had died for. They fell in love the way people do when they recognized their reflection in someone else's eyes. 6 months later, engaged. Planning a wedding, talking about children, about how they'd raise the next generation differently, about teaching the full story from the beginning, about honoring sacrifice while giving freedom. They got engaged in the Philippines, in Bulacan, in front of the small concrete house where Ernesto had grown up, where Lola Pachita had prayed for 6 years, where the story had started before Bella existed, both families present, roots from Bulacan and Iloilo coming together. Two families built on OFW sacrifice, creating a third. They wanted their marriage rooted in the soil their families had watered with tears and blood and prayers. They wanted their covenant to acknowledge the covenants that had made them possible. They wanted to start their family story by honoring the family stories that preceded them. In the Philippines, in family, in legacy, in memory made sacred. The wedding was in the same church where Ernesto and Davina had married 31 years earlier. Father Miguel, 83 now, performed the ceremony with shaking hands and steady faith. 400 people attended, relatives from every province, Filipino Americans who'd flown from across the United States, the entire Balikbayan legacy community. Marikit was maid of honor. Joel walked Bella down the aisle with Ernesto, 2 fathers, 1 blood, and 1 chosen. Bella wore traditional Filipiniana. Mateo wore an intricately embroidered barong Tagalog. They honored tradition while creating something new. They were building on foundations their parents had bled to create. They were the answer to prayers prayed by people they'd never met. During the reception, Bella showed the video she'd created, 45 minutes of her parents' hidden story, using photographs, letters, diary entries from the Balikbayan box. Her parents' journey made visible for the first time. The entire room watched in complete silence. 400 people witnessing suffering they'd only imagined. Seeing young Ernesto in dust-covered work clothes, young Davina looking skeletal in hospital uniform, reading letters about hunger, about homelessness, about death, about loss, about faith, about hope. When it ended, nobody clapped. They stood, they wept, they honored, not just Ernesto and Divina. Every OFW parent who'd ever suffered in silence so their children could smile loudly. Every invisible sacrifice, every hidden cost, every silent crucifixion, made visible, made sacred, made holy. Ernesto and Divina stood together receiving honor they'd never sought. They'd hidden their suffering for 26 years. Their daughter had made it visible, made it valuable, made it victorious. They'd thought silence was love. Bella had taught them that story was greater love, because story creates understanding. Understanding creates gratitude. Gratitude creates legacy. Their daughter had transformed their private pain into public testimony, their shame into strength, their suffering into scripture that would teach generations. They'd given her everything, hoping she'd live well. She'd taken everything and made it mean something eternal. That was more than success. That was resurrection. That was love multiplying itself beyond death. That was worth every sacrifice they'd made and every one they'd make again. That night, Bella sat with her parents in the Bulacan house where it all began. 3 generations of journey coming full circle. They drank instant coffee, talked quietly, reflected on the distance traveled from that first Balikbayan box to this wedding celebration. Divina said what she'd been afraid to say for 2 decades. I was terrified you'd hate us for hiding the truth, for protecting you so much you lost your roots, for making you so American you forgot how to be Filipino. Bella took her mother's hands. You gave me the greatest gift a parent can give, the freedom to choose my own path. I chose to walk back toward yours. That choice has more power than if you'd forced me from the beginning. This story teaches us one truth. Open the boxes your parents hid. Read the letters they never sent. Know what your life cost. Then live worthy of that sacrifice. Make their suffering sacred. Make their pain purposeful. Transform inheritance into responsibility. Honor the love that cost them everything by living like you finally understand.